Welcome to the Everybody Matters podcast. The show is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. Don't forget to connect with us on the web at Barry-Wehmiller.com, on Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and check out our blog, trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart, your host. The last time Anese Cavanaugh was on the Everybody Matters podcast, we talked about her book, Contagious Culture, where she proved that it's possible to create an energized and engaged organizational culture that spreads from person to person. On this episode, Mary Rudder and I talked to Anese about her new book, Contagious You, where she focuses on the individual leader, showing how we are all contagious in our own way, and stressing the importance of leading with intention to achieve positive results. Now, let's talk to Anese Cavanaugh. There's Contagious Culture, which has been out there for a while, and now the new book is Contagious You. What is Contagious You? Tell us about what the book is.
Okay, great. So Contagious Culture is simply a bunch of contagious yous hanging out together. So with Contagious Culture, I wrote that book to really help people realize that they are the culture. Every single one of us, when it's so easy to think that everything outside of us, it's happening to us or in our organizations. It's so easy to think that things outside of us are creating the culture. But what I have found in my work, and I think we're starting to really see this more culturally anyway. But what I found is that every single one of us is the culture. It's not something outside of us that's making it. It's each of us, how we show up, what we bring, our intentions, our energy, and our presence, what we bring to our work, to our life, to our children. That is the culture that gets created. So with Contagious Culture, that book was really to help people see that they're the culture, and then to learn how to build a positively contagious culture with their teams and throughout their organization, and then in their own personal life. And then with Contagious You, what happened was, Contagious Culture came out in 2015, and the questions since then have been so great in the rooms I've been in around, people wanted to know, how do they deepen their IEP practice, which IEP is their intentional energetic presence. How do they deepen their practice? How do they do this more gracefully and usefully with the people in their lives who maybe don't show up as well, or they're having a really hard time navigating different relationships. People wanted to know more about state, the energetic xylophone and shifting states and all these different pieces. And so when it came time to write the next book, I actually was thinking about two of them, and every single question that came to me pointed me towards Contagious You. So Contagious You is taking the reader more deeply into their own personal leadership and their intentional energetic presence, and then how do they bring that even more fully to create an even bigger contagious culture.
Okay, so what you're saying is all culture is local. It's the way I interact with Brent on a daily basis, the way they interact with the rest of my team. What is the most important thing that I, as a leader of a team, need to do each day?
Take care of yourself.
How so?
Take care of yourself. So in my mind, it's taking such great care of yourself, Mary, that your energy's handled. So your well-being, your health, your sleep, your mental health management, doing everything you possibly can to set yourself up every single day so that you bring all of yourself as intentionally as possible to each relationship. And that in my mind, after doing this work for 20 plus years, that's the common denominator I see with cultures that are healthy, and also with business leaders that are healthy, or leaders period that are healthy, is that they're working on their intentions and how they show up. They're working on their energy and how they take care of themselves, and they're actually present to what's happening in their life and with the people around them.
Yet burnout is now considered a medical diagnosis, workplace burnout. So, I want to take care of myself, but that doesn't work so well in today's workplaces.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is, we were talking before we started recording today, and I think this is another place where we have to be talking. We have to make this conversation so normal in terms of the choices that we're making around creating space and making the conversation around mental health and the conversation around our physical and physiological well-being, making that a priority in our organizations. Because I think that we're at a point where burnout it's just been diagnosed, or it's just been, just diagnosed as a medical diagnosis. And I think that unless we start to really prioritize this and make this a not only okay, but actually celebrated, I think that it's just going to get worse. The other piece is that, in the book, I talk about the P's of burnout. And when I look at burnout, burnout to me is not always just the physical side of it or the mental side of it. There's the, staying connected to our purpose. There's staying connected to being present and really allowing ourselves time to pause. There's staying connected to people and remembering who the people are that we're leading and why we're leading. And then also remembering that we have people around us to support us. And then there's staying connected and giving full permission for pain and pleasure and play. And so I always, when people talk about burnout, I always want to bring in that it's not just about the self-care from a physiological standpoint, but it's also addressing those different P's to help us, partner with and even transform burnout.
Self-care, I guess, would be the first thing to try to combat burnout. What are some of these other things that leaders can do to preserve themselves so they're showing up in a way that is positively contagious?
Yeah, well, I think the other thing with the self-care piece is, and I just want to offer, is I think it's important to look at what our definition of self-care is and what we make that mean. Because I think there's self-care in terms of, exercising and food and sleep and all that. There's also self-care in terms of our self-talk. And one of the things that I really notice is that part of where people are burning themselves out is with the way that they talk to themselves and the way that, if they make a mistake or if, they're frustrated because they're not getting their workouts in or whatever's going on, that continuous conversation that we can have running in our head, that's exhausting too. And in my mind, that actually is a huge deterrent to our self-care. It's what is the dialogue that we're having. So I just want to offer that in as well as really paying attention to, if I don't have time to go exercise 5 days a week and do all these different things, maybe the littlest thing I can do is I'm giving myself a 5-minute pause in my day just to take care of myself, check in, see how I'm actually talking to myself and see what my relationship is with my self-care, what that actually means to me. So does that, I know I'm adding a little bit to that last piece, but I feel like it's really important.
Yeah, I think that goes along with something that we tell people at Barry-Wehmiller is really important, is reflection. Take some time each day to really think about what you would like to achieve, what's realistic to achieve, and what's getting in the way, so that you have the right perspective and you're being really kind of authentic and present with yourself, because that's part of I can always have a list that's 100 things long, but that's not realistic. So making sure I take some time to really think about, what are the important priorities here? That's something that we teach our leaders all the time. Reflection should be part of everybody's day.
Yeah, I gosh, I could not agree more. I think, back to your question, Brian, about what other things can leaders do to be more positively contagious. I think there's a framework that I like to use first thing in the morning, and it's basically taking ourselves through the IEP method. And, the IEP method, if you look at it, there's 3 components. The first one is the ability to reboot our presence in the moment and to keep coming back to presence over and over and over again. The second component is building a strong, energetic field and foundation, which I'll come back to in just a moment. And that really has to do with self-care and what we've been talking about, the partnering and transforming burnout. And then the third part is the ability to create intentional impact. And so at the beginning of the day, if a leader has if somebody, and by leader, I mean any human being who's leading their life, who wants to have more impact and also wants to feel good doing so, that's my definition of a leader. So, I want to be clear about that. This is not just for senior leadership or somebody who's been given leadership title. It's every single human being, in my opinion, is a leader if they so choose to lead. And so if at the beginning of the day, if we did nothing else except for check in with, okay, what are my intentions today? This is to your point about reflection. It's like, what do I want to create today? How do I want to show up today? What are the most important things I want to accomplish? How do I want people to experience me? Really setting the tone for the day, just spending even 10 minutes at the beginning of the day to think about what are my intentions and how I want to show up today. That to me is a game changer. Then if I look at energy, which is the second part of the methodology, and I go, okay, how am I going to take care of myself? Maybe I don't have time for a huge workout, or maybe I didn't get as much sleep as I wanted last night, but what are the littlest things I can do to take care of my energy? And maybe that's, I'm going to pay attention to my breathing. I'm going to actually use the bathroom when I need to use the bathroom today. I'm going to hydrate. I'm going to actually choose good food over that fast food today. Like whatever it is to take care of my energy and stamina so I can move through my day with as much ease and energy as possible. And then the third component is presence. So, all right, what's my presence going to be? How am I going to show up? How am I going to keep coming back to rebooting so I'm present from this moment with Mary to this moment with Brent to this moment with this meeting? And I think those three things, if people did nothing else, like what are your intentions? What's the energy you're bringing to the table, and how are you taking care of yourself? And then how present are you? Those three things in themselves, that right there, if we can give ourselves the gift of even a few minutes to address that and then kind of check in with it throughout the day, to me, that's where more positively and usefully contagious energy and leadership comes from.
Why don't leaders do some of those things that you were just talking about on a regular basis? Why do we have to write about this stuff in a book to point out that these are the things that need to be done?
Oh gosh, it's such a good question. I think my experience of that is a couple things. One, I think people don't do it out of bad habit. Like a couple things. One, bad habit, they get up in the morning and they check their phone before they're even out of bed, and they're swooped into their day, and there's no time to actually stop or they don't create the time, I should say, to actually just stop and give themselves a minute to set their intentions. So, one could be bad habit. Two is a lot of times people don't know how. I can't tell you guys, I'm sure you've seen this as well. I can't tell you how many times I'll be talking with someone and I'll ask them, well, what is your intention? And they'll go, oh gosh, I don't even know. I haven't thought about it. Or, how are you taking care of yourself today to make sure that you are able to create that impact? Oh gosh, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Or how present are you right now in this moment? Oh gosh, you know what? I'm in 18 different places, Anese. So I think a lot of times people don't, and I'll just speak to it in terms of IEP. In my experience, people don't realize that is something. It's just they've been moving through their lives so quickly that they don't realize that is something that they have control over if they so choose to start accessing the discipline to practice it. So bad habit, don't realize it, or just don't want to do it because it's so easy to get sucked into everybody else's demands. And so to me, at the end of the day, it always comes back to self-authorship and going, all right, if I am not having the impact I want to have, or I want to have even more impact, who is it I need to become, and what do I need to do to take care of myself? And am I willing to do the work, like set aside 10 minutes a day to really get intentional about how I'm going to show up? And that's kind of what it boils down to for me.
Yeah, we find that all the time. People don't have the intention about it. They don't, especially with regard to formal leaders, because everybody's the leader of their life and everybody's the leader in some capacity in their life, in some part of their life. But in a formal leadership role, they just, they don't even stop to think about that, to do the work of leadership. Because there is work involved in just being, everybody on our company, or most people are player coaches, like I'm a leader, but I also have work to do. But if I don't stop and spend the time doing the leadership work, then the leadership doesn't work. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I think, and you're speaking to a really important point, which is that it takes work. So it does require an amount of intention and work and discipline to be proactive about your leadership. And I think that it can be very easy, especially when we're tired or we just don't know how yet, it can be very easy to be so incredibly reactive, and then to think that it's going to be such hard work to actually start getting in front of it. So I think it's important to underline, it is a conscious intention to become more and more of a stronger leader, and it does take work. But that work, in my mind, once you start doing it, you start making it a practice or a daily practice. Once you start doing that, then it actually creates less work because now you're in front of things. And so you can be more the cause of things versus the effect all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this all tie into something that you call in the book leadership depression? How does that manifest itself in terms of what we've been talking about?
So leadership depression is just something I started to pick up on, where what I notice is there's a lot of people that are moving really, really fast, and they're taking on more and more and more and more. And they've got people that they report to, their bosses, and then they also have people that report to them. So they're kind of in the middle, or they've got clients that they're reporting to, and then they've got their staff that they're managing. And what I noticed, and where I came up with that term, was I started to notice this almost kind of malaise, like this tiredness that I would notice in people, where they would be doing stuff maybe really, really high performing, but it's this never ending hamster wheel where they're, even if they're doing their IEP and they're setting their intentions and they're doing their very best at taking care of themselves, there's this never ending stop. Like, at the end of the day, they're going, okay, wow, I'm exhausted from today. I had the work of 3 people that was really for one person, the work that should have been for 3 people, I'm doing it myself. I've got more ways to connect than ever. I'm, like all these demands that we've got externally, but then also that we're putting on ourselves. And what I would notice is they get to the end of the day and they go, okay, what's the point? Like, I can't keep this up. And what I have found is that if we don't address what I think of as leadership depression, which is just kind of this heaviness, like it's not burnout, but it's just a heaviness of what's the point? How long can I keep this up for? When is it going to stop? When is the change going to stop? If we don't get in front of that and start holding better boundaries around our self-care and saying no and being more intentional about designing our workloads and how we work together, that leads to leadership depression. And then ultimately that will be a huge contributor to burnout.
Here's something I'd love to talk to you about. Someone who's a leader who has a great energy about them, and that's contagious with your team. There's always times when we must have difficult conversations. Mm-hmm. And that's not a positive energy necessarily.
Right.
How do you make that work? What do you suggest?
So to me, that is about bringing an authentic energy in the conversation and being really, really clean about your intention. So if I go in to have that conversation with my employee, let's just say I'm going in to have a difficult conversation with my employee, I can go in there and I can have high vibe, positive energy, which is going to actually be inauthentic and not be meeting my employee or the situation where it's at in a realistic way. So that'll come across as inauthentic. I can go in and I can be really frustrated and have that energy bring in to my employee, which is also not going to be very effective. Or I can take a nice deep breath and I can really look at, all right, what is my intention here? My intention is to give this employee this difficult feedback. My intention is to be in service of them and their growth. My intention might actually be to exit them, but to do it in a way that has got grace. I want to check in with my intention, because if I'm clean on my intention and I go in there and I'm present, I've managed my energy so I'm not walking in totally exhausted and starving and whatever might be going on physically. If I go in and my intention is clean and clear towards that employee, then my energy will take care of itself because the intention is pure. The thing that I think that we miss, that to me the secret sauce in all of this, is if I am clear about my intention and how I want to contribute to this person or this situation, right there, that's the root of everything. If I'm clear about my intention, the energy will take care of itself. Now, if I'm taking really good care of my energy in terms of my self-care, my well-being, my sleep and all that, then it's going to be easier for me to stay pure in my intention. And then if I'm present, now I can be present to that employee and see what's going on, and I can respond authentically in the moment without lowering my energy, getting sucked into any drama, or, trying to be really high vibe and positive in a way that's not going to be authentic. So it's not about, one of the things that people mistake, especially with the energetic xylophone that I talk about in the book, is they think that, being a positively contagious leader means that you're always bouncing off the walls and everything is really great and all this stuff. And that is completely not true. What I'm looking at is, what is the quality of the energy you're bringing to anything so that you can show up as a solid invitation for whatever is happening in that room, be it's terrible and heavy and very, very stressful, or it's, very light and whatever. It's being conscious about what the quality of your energy is, and then how do you manage that in a way that is going to have you have the most effective, invitational, solid leadership.
Right, because we all know you couldn't have a whole organization full of high energy cheerleaders, because that's not what works for everybody. Some people that you lead, that's not appealing to them as a leader. They might need a leader that's a little bit more subdued, But if their intention is there and their energy is in the right space, then that's works for them.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I think again, I just I was doing a Cora session last week, and one of the big questions was people kept asking, can you have an energetic presence if you're an extrovert or an introvert, all these different things. And to me, it's not about if I'm extroverted or introverted or anything. It's about how present am I to the current situation and how authentic am I being in my energy. And then I want to stay connected to my intention for what's going on around me. So if I am clean on my intention, I'm taking care of my energy, and I'm really, really present, I will naturally know what to do. And it does not matter what personality type I have, what Myers-Briggs I am. It's just being conscious about how I am with that person and being authentic in it. And then meeting people where they're at. That's a big piece as well. Because to your point, Mary, if I go in and I'm like, hey there, hi there, ho there, and the room is not there, I've just broken trust and credibility with them. So I don't want to go in and pretend to be someone I'm not, but I want to pay attention to what energy is actually needed here. And if my intention is to meet the room where they're at and to be of service to them, my energy will naturally start to calibrate to meet them there.
So is that the key then, meeting somebody where they are? Is that the key to cultivating positive energy, or is there more to that?
Well, I think meeting people where they're at is key to leadership. I think that I think meeting people where they're at and being an invitation for them to come with you is where leadership is a form of leadership. So for example, let's just say I've got that employee you talked about earlier, and he's having a really rough day, and I've got to go get that hard feedback, and they're just not having it, So I go in and my energy's clean, and my intention is clean, but that employee is really, really negative or even toxic. To me, there's a leadership opportunity and responsibility to hold my energetic state by being clean on my intention, my energy, and my presence. So I'm going to hold my state, but I'm also going to meet him where he's at, meaning that I'm going to be conscious of what's going on for him, but I'm going to be conscious of what's going on for him, but I'm not going to lower my energetic vibration, so to speak, to match him in being really negative. I'm going to hold my state. And in that, meeting him where he's at is acknowledging what's going on for him. So it might be, hey, George, I'm noticing this probably feels very stressful for you. I'm noticing that your arms are crossed, your energy around, you seem really angry. So that's a form of meeting him where he's at without making him wrong, so that I can be an invitation to him to actually step up into a higher level vibration to have a more productive conversation with me.
Let's talk a little bit about negative energy right now. How can that cost an organization? What is the price of negative energy in that environment?
Well, if you look at that, I mean, just take, anybody, all of us could think about the cost of a negative energy just off the bat, just in terms of how it feels. It doesn't feel good to come to work. The lost creativity, the lack of safety, if there's a lot of negative energy in an organization. So you can look at the feelings of it, and then you can kind of look at what would that, if you were applying, so for an example, in a meeting, let me just take a meeting. Say you have a meeting and you've got 6 people going into the meeting, and 4 of you feel really, really great, and you're ready to go. Your IEP's clean. You're prepared for the meeting, and you walk in. You've got 2 people in that meeting that are just not having it. They don't want to be there. The lowest vibration in the room, and you walk in. Typically, what happens is the lowest vibration will win, unless one of those 4 people is really good at holding their state and keeping their IEP clean. So a lot of times, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen this, you walk in a room and those 2 people are really low vibe. The 4 people that went in, all of a sudden the room starts to lower. And now the meeting is not going as well. They're not as productive. The meeting ends up not being a great meeting. And then everyone leaves and goes, oh gosh, see, meetings totally sucked. That was horrible, blah, blah, blah. And then the 2 people with the lowest vibe are super, super justified because the meeting didn't go well. So if you take just that meeting and you take those 6 people, and let's just say you take their average billable rate of what it costs to have them as an employee in the company, right there is a financial cost just for that meeting alone, let alone the time that they're going to spend gossiping and complaining when they go home about how horrible that meeting was, let alone, or not to mention the extra meeting that's going to have to be scheduled now to get stuff done that you didn't get done. So you can do it really, really simply in terms of what is the actual financial cost of a meeting with low energy. But you can also look at it much bigger, which is what's our lost opportunity cost? What does it cost us to not have a safe organization? What is it costing us in productivity? I think in the book, I did some research. I looked at Gallup, and the Gallup's latest numbers, 2016, was that, the United States, we lose $483 billion to $605 billion a year in lost productivity due to low engagement or to actively disengaged employees. Well, that right there, to me, actively disengaged comes from a lack of trust lack of connection, lack of autonomy, all these different pieces, which if you continue to drill those down, come down to, in my mind, not being present, not being connected, and not having a healthy organization. So I think the costs are huge. I think we haven't even started to, I think we're just starting to peel back the onion on how much it actually costs us to have negative energy in our organizations.
So what would you suggest somebody do in that situation?
In which one? In the meeting?
Yeah, in the meeting. Like, how do we combat that? What's some practical advice?
Great. Okay, so before you even go in the meeting, remember the lowest vibration will win unless there's at least one person in that room that is good at holding their state. So if you're hearing this information or you're even aware of it or even aware that there's low vibe, you now have a responsibility as a leader to set the tone with a higher energetic state. So practically speaking, before I even walk into a room, I'm going to want to get really, really clean on my IEP, set my intentions for how I want to show up, make sure I'm well-resourced. I've taken care of myself. I don't have to use the bathroom. I've got some water, whatever I need to do to take care of myself. And I'm going to be really present with that meeting. So if I walk in and I bring in a clean, energetic state, I have a better chance of being able to hold that meeting at that vibration and invite those people that are lower vibe to step up to meet me there. So that's the first thing, is one, to just do my own energetic hygiene first and hold my IEP so I can be in service of that room. That's the first step. If that doesn't work and the low vibe is still winning, then the next step for me, and I actually go through this and I give a framework for it in the book, but the next step will be for me to actually say, hey, George, what's going on? Like, let's just check in. How are you guys doing? How's everyone doing in the room today? And I could even do something like an energy check and just have people check in. Scale of 0 to 10, how are you doing? 0, you're terrible, you don't want to be here, you're exhausted. 10 being, you feel amazing, you're ready to light this meeting on fire, like it's going to be awesome. And I can actually have everyone just do a quick check-in. The minute I've gotten curious and put that in the room around checking with how people are, oftentimes those lower vibe people, for lack of a better expression right now, lower vibe will start to step up because they've just been acknowledged and they've been asked to share where they're at. So that often will take care of it right there because we've now just given it care and attention. If that still doesn't work, then I'm probably going to call a timeout and say, hey, George and Georgette, can we go outside? I want to talk to you for a few minutes. I'm going to ask them what's going on and get curious without making them wrong. Get curious about what's going on with the way that they're showing up in the room. Is there something that they want to speak to? Do they need anything? And are they aware of the impact they're having on the room? From there, that will often take care of it. And if that doesn't take care of it, that's a whole other discussion, which I've only seen it go to a deeper level of discussion a couple times in my entire career.
What is this contagion factor formula?
So I've been paying attention to what makes us contagious, and I was playing with formulas when I was writing the book, and I basically, if you look at that formula, to me, it is the components that are at hand to determine how contagious we're going to be. So, for example, and it's a little hard to say it, but I'm gonna map it out, and so everyone just visualize it with me. The first component is we take our actions. So any action that I do, that's the top is it the denominator? The top number is the action that I do. Then underneath that, I would take an equation of looking at my emotions that I have when I'm doing the action, and I can give an example in a moment. The emotions times the intention that I have about that action or towards that person. And then over my level of self-care times my presence. And if I take the actions over those 4 things on the bottom and I multiply the actions over those 4 things, that is going to equal my contagious factor, which is going to mean how contagious I'll be, how positive or negative it will be, and how likely I am to get my desired result. So for example, if we take giving someone feedback, and we take that left side, we look at the action. The action is the feedback, giving someone feedback. If I look at my emotions, and let's just say my emotion is I'm frustrated because I've given them the feedback before, I'm totally annoyed that I got to do this again. I think that they're a terrible person, like whatever it is, whatever my emotion is, times my intention. And in that case, my intention might be just get this feedback conversation over with. That's a really common one. Like, let's just get this done. So if you look at that, let's just say the emotion of, I can't believe the emotion is blame and judgment times my intention of let's get this done. Just imagine the energy that is going to be coming at that person in that feedback conversation. Now let's make it even more rich and look at my presence and my self-care. Let's just say that my presence is of really busy. I'm super, super busy. I can't be bothered by this. So that's my energy. My energy is busy. Times my self-care being I'm exhausted, I haven't taken care of myself, I'm moving from meeting to meeting. Now you've got another part of the equation, which is going to be even more detrimental to that equation. So if we look at that actions over those four, the outcome of that feedback is going to be most likely negative, contagious, not well received by the person, and nobody's going to feel good from it. So if we instead take that equation on the left-hand side and we change even one of the bottom dynamics. We change the emotion to, you know what, actually, I'm going to be curious. Like, we've had this conversation a couple times. I wonder why we keep having this conversation. I wonder what George needs. I wonder how I might give this feedback even more effectively. Like curiosity or caring, like shifting that emotion even slightly in a way that's authentic, times the intention. Let's just take the intention and say that now my intention, instead of getting it over with, I actually want to be in service of this person. Like, let's just shift it to being in service of this human being who I have an opportunity and a responsibility to lead and nourish. I want to be in service of this person. So now caring or curious times the intention to serve, that changes the energetic dynamics. Look underneath there, presence. Let's just say that instead of being so busy, I'm going to actually stop, take a breath, do a quick reboot, and really be present with this person. Times self-care, meaning I'm going to do anything I can to take care of myself right now. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to go use the bathroom. I'm going to drink some water, whatever it might be. Now, if we've got that stronger base, now we have a much, much stronger, more powerful bottom for the action of feedback. We're more likely to have a positive result and more positively contagious energy for that person, where that person is more likely to feel seen, cared about, and inspired by that feedback.
Well, that would be great if people could learn to do that. Again, if they would put the work into thinking about that, how they're actually going to approach these situations. I mean, that's as a leader, I feel like that's half the battle for me, is just thinking about it and being intentional about it and doing it for the right reasons. Always with the growth and lives of my team members in the forefront, because that's the reason. I mean, that's why I'm a leader, because I have these people who are following me. It's definitely a privilege.
Oh, for sure. And I think an important part of the conversation here is to also be really graceful and gentle with ourselves, because it's really easy to sit here and go, well, just put this equation in here and do this and do that and set your intentions every day. And I'll be the first to say, like, I get that can be daunting, and I get that can be a huge responsibility. But I also believe that if we can be kind to ourselves in the process and trust that even awareness. So to me, awareness here is 70% of the battle. If I have awareness that I'm not having the impact I want, or that my team feels really exhausted, or whatever's going on, as soon as I have awareness, I'm 70% there. The additional 30% is, what do I decide to do with it? And some days I might decide, you know what, I'm too tired. I'm sick of leading. I don't want to do anything. And that's a choice. So I want to own that choice. And then other days I might decide, you know what, I'm going to do the littlest thing possible, which in this case right now, it might be that I need to take a 5-minute break to go take care of myself so I can be in a better state to serve those people that I'm leading. And so I just think that grace is really important here. Being willing to have the conversation with our team about things like how we're showing up and our intentions, energy, and presence, even playing with the contagion factor formula and making it be something fun and something that can be our friend versus this really huge, hard leadership thing we've got to do. I think that is part of starting to wiggle our way into another paradigm of leadership.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this question. It's been interesting to hear you use the word responsibility a number of times throughout this conversation. I'm assuming that's intentional?
Yes, very. Yes, very. So if you look at the word responsibility, which is like, oh my gosh, I've got all this responsibility to lead, and I'm responsible for the world, and I'm responsible for my people. In my experience, for myself and for most people I talk with, that responsibility can be heavy, very, very heavy. So instead, my invitation is for people to start looking at it as responsibility, which means I am able to respond to whatever shows up at the best of my ability. So I find it gives me personally a lot of space when instead of having to be responsible for everything, I trust myself to be responsible. There's more of a expansion in that word. There's more space, and there's more of a there's more access to different ways of handling things. Because if you think about George, or that employee you're having that conversation with, if I'm responsible for him, that can be that in my experience, that's very contracting. There's one direction that's going to go. If I'm responsible with him, it means I'm going to be able to respond to whatever's going on with him in a way that is authentic for me, as long as I'm present and I'm clean on my intention. So I do use responsible very intentionally in my work with people.
On the whole, and I know you've talked about some of these throughout our conversation, but let's kind of break it down for people. On the whole, how can you be a leader that is continually trying to encourage a positive environment, being that possibly contagious leader?
Well, I think, Brent, I always come back to, we have to do our work individually first. I think that something as simple as starting the day for myself as leader, before I even get into my company, get into my office, starting the day with taking care of myself, so I'm clear in my own intentions, my energy, and my presence, and so I bring my best self to the table to help set the tone. I think that's the most important thing, actually. I think that my self-care and my IEP as a leader is the biggest gift that I can give to the people that I lead, because it's going to help me be more clear and more of a stand for them. And then also from that place, I can give more. So then once I get into the office and I'm actually working with people, I think there are things like staying really connected to purpose, and why, helping my team and the people that I lead stay connected to purpose and why we're doing the work that we're doing, and why in particular it's so important that they're on the team. So I'm really enrolling and inviting them to take ownership around that shared purpose and their roles in it. I think that another way of being a positive, contagious leader is creating space for the conversation around self-care and well-being, and what do people need, and how are people, and how can we be even better as a team together? What are the things that we see as a team or organization that would make us even more effective together? What kind of agreements would we want to put in place? Like all these different pieces where we're just opening up a conversation to really support people to come together and to connect in service of feeling good as a team, and then also in service of having a really positive impact together.
Thanks for listening to the Everybody Matters podcast. If you want to find out more about Anese Cavanaugh and Contagious You, go to our website, anesecavanaugh.com. If you'd like to find out more about Bob Chapman and Ross Zodia's book, Everybody Matters, The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family, go to everybodymattersbook.com. For updates on the book, this podcast, and a lot of great content and insight, don't forget to connect with us on the web at Barry-Wehmiller.com, on Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and check out our blog, trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, Everybody Matters is the only business idea with truly unlimited potential.